Today we're going to be talking about the difference between the Glock 43X and the Glock 48. So I wanted to see if there was a performance difference. I didn't want to see just punching paper at 7 yards and then proclaiming a victor. I wanted to see if there was an actual performance difference if I put myself on time standards and shot under pressure. Now, if you're going to say, well, you're just using a shot timer at an indoor range and that's not on pressure. Yes, but I'm also filming it and putting it on the internet so everybody can make fun of my shooting ability. So the pressure to perform is there, I assure you. So I decided to do a series of tests. First would just be 7-yard accuracy, 25-yard accuracy. Then I'd perform the 5-yard roundup, which I have another video for. You can click the card and check it out. And the 15-yard test, which is basically 10 shots in 15 seconds at 15 yards from the holster. So we'll take it down to the mat, look at the guns, talk about the stuff that everyone's already talked about, then I'll show you the footage. So by now, you're no doubt aware that the difference between the 48 and the 43X is about 0.6 inches on the barrel, which equates to about 2 ounces. And otherwise, they have the same trigger group, everything else is the same. People are hailing this as the perfect size for a CCW while saying that this is unwieldy and why would anyone carry this. They carry the same. If you hadn't seen my review, check that out. So the difference is really going to be about a ½ inch or so in the holster body length. These are both Harry's holsters. This is for the 43 and this is for the 48. This is actually more comfortable when carried in the appendix position than this, but some people are really hung up about this. If you're carrying outside the waistband, then a shorter barrel is going to be advantageous because it's less likely to stick down under your shirt. But on inside the waistband, I think the longer holster body is a little bit more comfortable. It balances better. The grip doesn't try to turn out over your waistband quite as bad. So I actually prefer for inside the waistband the longer holster body. I actually use this with my Glock 43 as well. These are Harry's holsters. I have a discount code. TheHumbleMarksman will save you 10%. Follow the link in the description if these are of interest to you. They're pretty good. So that is the difference between these pistols. Now, it's worth noting that the 43 slide has Dawson precision sights, which are excellent target sights, while the 48 is wearing Ameriglows. But let's jump right in. So if we go by the conventional wisdom of the internet and we shoot slow fire groups at 5 or 7 yards to proclaim a victor, you can see I managed to have a brain fart and shoot the Glock 43 at 5 yards and the 48 at 7 yards. The distance is pretty much the same. That's 2 bullet holes. So yes, you can stack rounds. That was a called flyer. The accuracy is going to be the same at this yard. Nobody's contesting that in a sterile environment, you can produce about the same groups shooting guns with the same trigger pack. Yes, if you look at this, it's not that big a deal. If we back it up to 25 yards, you can see that the Glock 48 rear sight needs to be drifted. This is actually 2 impacts that were barely on the paper. The mean point of impact is about right there. So I have already drift adjusted it to get it back to 0. Meanwhile, the Glock 43X, I was able to land 4 on paper and the 5th round was about right there, just off the edge of the paper. Now, what I'm not telling you is this is actually the 2nd attempt for me to make these hits. The first attempt, I didn't land a single round on paper. At long distances, the 43X is more difficult to shoot than the 48. And a lot of people are going to say, well, that's not a self-defense distance. Yeah, but for precision shooting at close range targets, it's still going to be the same phenomenon that you experience. So for the 48, which I shot first, I printed a better group if you actually just measure the group and not the point of impact than I was with the 43X with 2 tries. So big points when you're shooting at distance targets with the 48. Now, I already have a video on the 5-yard roundup if you want more details, but it's 4 strings of fire with 2.5-second par times from 5 yards, 10 shots total. The first string is draw from the holster 1 shot. Second string is from the low ready, fire 4 shots in 2.5 seconds. Switch to strong hand only, 2.5 seconds you have to fire 3 shots strong hand only. And then final string is in the support hand, shoot 2 shots in 2.5 seconds. So the hits are scored based on the B8 bullseye target. You can see the shot disbursement is actually much tighter on the Glock 48. I had 1 flyer that was a shot with actually it was in my right hand. I was a flyer with my right hand as the first shot that I fired. But what's interesting is if you actually look at the times, and I'll throw the times up on the screen now and compare, The first shot time is roughly the same on these. The strong hand only and weak hand only is roughly the same, but the 4-round rapid fire string, I was able to print a much tighter group with the 48 faster. I was about 0.4 seconds faster. Firing 4 shots in 0.4 seconds, that's a 1/10 per shot. That's not nothing overall. And I was able to hold a tighter shot pattern. You can see I threw a lot of 8s with the 43. I only had 1 7 with the 48, and I shot this first. And then the 15-yard test, you can see the targets here. This is 10 shots in 15 seconds. You score the B8. Anything on the repair zone that is going to count is the 7 ring. So you can see just the shot disbursements. You can notice that the sights, the impacts are all going to be to the left of the bullseye. I had 2 on the X, but then everything else about the mean point of impact was a couple inches off from where the X was. So the sights are off, but whereas the 43X, you can see all of the shots started to kind of open up. They're not quite as tightly clustered. I was clearly holding under the X, but if you actually total up the scores, I shot a 92 with the 43X. You can see that the impacts were all off to the left, and that's going to hurt the score, which is why the 43X was able to win. But I did learn something important shooting at 15 yards with this side by side. I learned that I much prefer the Dawson Precision sights to the Ameriglows, so I'll probably end up with Ameriglows. Now, as far as shooting these guns is concerned, it was very observable that the recoil impulse was much sharper and more violent out of the 43X than it was out of the 48. This is a softer shooting gun. It wasn't huge, but it was noticeable and it was appreciable. This gun would wear you out more on the range session than this gun would. So all things equal, the 48 is easier to hit with. It's just easier to shoot with. And if you look at the super test times, it kind of reflects that. I was able to get roughly the same scores on pretty much everything, but it's easier to shoot at distance, and when shooting rapidly, the slower recoil impulse makes this more controllable. If you're not as much concerned with performance, the 43X absolutely will get the job done, but the 48 is a bit easier to use. Now, I'm a high round count shooter every month. I take training very seriously for USPSA competition, and I am more proficient than most with pistols. The 48 was much easier for me to shoot than the 43X. I think in the hands of the layperson or hobbyist or somebody who's not going to train a lot, the results are probably going to be even more apparent between the two different guns. But that's what I got for you guys. That's my 2 cents. If you're carrying outside the waistband and are sensitive to 2 ounces, the 43X is a fantastic option for you. And the 48 is a good option if you're not bothered by the extra barrel length. I would take either one of these guns over the Shield in a heartbeat. So I appreciate you guys watching. Please subscribe, like, all that good stuff, and I will catch you guys on the next one.